Judge William Harrington tapped his gavel with practiced authority. The courtroom fell silent as he looked down at the young black woman standing before him. She was dressed neatly in a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back in a professional style. The traffic violation was minor, a rolling stop at an intersection, but her attitude bothered him greatly. "Ms. Eleanor Bennett, you are charged with failing to come to a complete stop at the intersection of Oak and Main. How do you plead?" he asked, his voice stern. "Not guilty, Your Honor," Eleanor replied calmly. "I believe there has been a mistake." Judge Harrington frowned. He had been on the bench for 20 years and didn't like when people questioned the police. Officer James Taylor had been serving the community for 15 years, and his word was usually enough for the judge. "Officer Taylor, please tell the court what you observed," the judge said. The officer stood up. "At approximately 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday, I observed Ms. Bennett's vehicle approaching the stop sign. The vehicle slowed down but did not come to a complete stop before turning right." Eleanor spoke up. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence. I have dashcam footage from my car that shows I did stop completely." The judge sighed loudly. "Ms. Bennett, are you suggesting the officer is not telling the truth?" "I'm suggesting that from his angle it might have appeared that way, but my footage shows the complete stop," Eleanor explained politely. Something about her calm confidence irritated the judge. Most people were nervous in his courtroom, but Eleanor seemed perfectly at ease, as if she belonged there. "Let's see this footage then," Judge Harrington said, expecting it to be inconclusive. Eleanor connected her phone to the courtroom display. The video clearly showed her car coming to a full stop for 3 seconds before turning. Despite the clear evidence, Judge Harrington was annoyed. "Ms. Bennett, while your vehicle did stop, it appears you were slightly over the white line. That still constitutes a violation." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your Honor, the statute requires a complete stop, which I made. The exact position relative to the line is not specified in the code as long as visibility is maintained," which it was. The judge felt his face growing warm. "Ms. Bennett, I find you guilty of violating Traffic Code 43.2. That will be a fine of $350. He deliberately added an extra $100 above the standard fee, something he occasionally did when defendants were too argumentative. The courtroom was quiet. Everyone could sense the unfairness, but no one spoke up. "Your Honor, I respectfully request to appeal this decision," Eleanor said, still maintaining her composure. "That is your right, Ms. Bennett," the judge replied coldly. "Pay the clerk on your way out or file your appeal. Next case." As Eleanor gathered her belongings, she placed a small white business card on the defense table. Judge Harrington was already calling the next case and didn't notice. Later that afternoon, the court clerk, Mary Williams, brought some papers to the judge's chambers. "Judge Harrington, I thought you might want to know something about that woman this morning, Ms. Bennett." "What about her?" he asked, not looking up from his work. Mary placed the business card on his desk. "She left this behind." Judge Harrington picked up the card and read, "Eleanor Bennett, founding partner, Bennett Legal Solutions, specialist in civil rights and justice reform." His stomach dropped. He flipped the card over and saw more text. "Former Crown Prosecutor, Oxford Law Review. Editor, Legal Educator." For the first time that day, Judge William Harrington felt uneasy. He had assumed Eleanor was just another defendant without legal knowledge. He had judged her based on appearances and had been completely wrong. Mary added, "I looked her up. Her firm just won that big discrimination case against the Westfield Police Department last month. She's quite well known in legal circles." The judge sat back in his chair, the realization washing over him. He had made a serious mistake. Not just a legal error, but a human one. What he didn't know was that Eleanor Bennett had chosen not to identify herself as an attorney. She wanted to experience the justice system exactly as her clients did, and now she had quite a story to tell. The end, 3 weeks later. Judge Harrington sat in his chambers reviewing the day's cases. The morning sun streamed through the window, highlighting the dust motes floating in the air. He sipped his black coffee, the same brand he had drunk for 15 years, and tried to focus on the paperwork before him. His clerk, Mary Williams, knocked on the door softly before entering. She carried a stack of files and an uncertain expression on her face. "Your Honor, there's something on your calendar today you should know about," she said. "Bennett Legal Solutions is representing 6 defendants who are contesting traffic violations. From your court, they've filed a motion to review sentencing patterns." The judge frowned. "Bennett Legal Solutions? That's the woman from the stop sign case, isn't it?" Mary nodded. "Yes, sir. Eleanor Bennett. The hearing is set for 11 o'clock. Judge Harrington felt a knot forming in his stomach. He had hoped the Bennett incident would simply fade away. He had even considered calling her to apologize, but pride had stopped him. "Thank you, Mary," he said, dismissing her with a nod. Alone again, he pulled out his phone and searched for Eleanor Bennett. Her firm's website showed an impressive list of cases she had won, primarily focusing on civil rights and equal justice. There was a photo of her standing outside the Royal Courts of Justice looking confident and professional. At precisely 11 o'clock, Judge Harrington entered his courtroom. His eyes immediately found Eleanor Bennett at the counsel table. Today she wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, her hair styled elegantly. She was surrounded by 3 associates, all reviewing documents. "All rise," called the bailiff. "The Honorable Judge William Harrington presiding." As the judge took his seat, he noticed the gallery was unusually full. There were several reporters present, their notebooks ready. "Case number 2458, motion for review of traffic violation procedures," announced. The clerk, Eleanor, rose smoothly. "Eleanor Bennett for the petitioners, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "You may proceed, Ms. Bennett." Eleanor approached the bench with the same quiet confidence he had mistaken for disrespect 3 weeks earlier. "Your Honor, we're filing a motion to review traffic violation procedures in this district, with particular attention to statistical disparities in fines imposed on minority defendants." She handed a thick document to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. "Our analysis shows that over the past 5 years, minority defendants in this court have received fines averaging 40% higher than white defendants for identical violations. We've broken this down by judge, by offense type, and by time of day." The courtroom was silent as Judge Harrington looked at the first page of the report. There was his name, at the top of the list of judges with disparity issues. The numbers were clear and damning. "We are not alleging intentional discrimination, Your Honor," Eleanor continued. "Rather, we believe these statistics point to unconscious bias affecting judicial decisions. We're asking for a formal review by the Judicial Conduct Committee and the implementation of a blind sentencing protocol." Judge Harrington looked up from the report. For the first time in his 20-year career, he felt truly seen and judged. "Ms. Bennett, these are serious allegations. What are you hoping to accomplish here?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Eleanor met his gaze directly. "Justice, Your Honor. Equal justice. Nothing more, nothing less." The judge glanced at the gallery, at the reporters scribbling notes, at the defendant sitting hopefully behind Eleanor. Among them was a young, black man who looked barely 20, an elderly Asian woman with glasses, and a Middle Eastern man in a work uniform. "I'll need time to review these materials," Judge Harrington said finally. "Court will recess for 1 hour." Back in his chambers, William Harrington stared out the window. The courthouse square was busy with people going about their day, unaware of the reckoning taking place inside. He thought about his father, also a judge who had taught him to believe in the system. Had he been carrying forward outdated ideas without questioning them? Had he been seeing what he expected to see rather than what was actually there? The report lay open on his desk. Page after page of numbers that couldn't be explained away. His own unconscious biases exposed in black and white. With a heavy sigh, Judge Harrington picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Robert? It's William. I need your advice." Robert Thompson had been his mentor, a judge, known for his fairness and open mind. "I think I've made some mistakes, big ones." As he talked, William realized this wasn't just about Eleanor Bennett or the 6 defendants waiting in his courtroom. It was about every person who had stood before him, trusting in a system that promised equal justice for all. The end that evening, William sat alone in his study at home. The room was lined with law books he had collected over his 30-year legal career. A single lamp cast a warm glow over his desk where he had spread out Eleanor Bennett's report. His reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied the numbers again and again. He poured himself a small glass of bourbon and took a sip. The drink burned slightly, but it did nothing to ease the heavy feeling in his chest. The report was clear. When defendants were black or from other minority groups, he had given higher fines than when defendants were white. The difference was, not small, 40% higher on average for the exact same offenses. "This can't be right," he whispered to the empty room, but the numbers didn't lie. William thought back to Eleanor Bennett standing in his courtroom 3 weeks ago. He remembered feeling annoyed by her confidence. Had he really fined her more just because she didn't seem nervous enough? Because she had questioned the officer's account? He pulled up the court records on his laptop and began looking through his own cases from the past year. As he sorted them by type of offense and amount of fine, a pattern emerged. The bias was real, and he had never noticed it. The realization hit him hard. All these years he had prided himself on being fair and just. He had believed that he treated everyone equally under the law, but the evidence showed otherwise. William closed his laptop and removed his glasses. He rubbed his tired eyes and thought about what to do next. The next morning, he called his old friend Robert Thompson. Robert had been a judge for 40 years before retiring and was known throughout the legal community for his fairness. "Robert, I need to talk," William said when his friend answered. "Can I come over?" An hour later, the two men sat on Robert's back porch. Birds sang in the garden and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. William explained about Eleanor Bennett and the report she had presented. "It's a blind spot, William," Robert said gently after listening to the whole story. "We all have them. Question is, what will you do now that you see it?" William stared out at the garden. "I don't know. I've been unfair to people for years without realizing it. How do I make that right?" Robert took a sip of his coffee. "You can't change the past, but you can change the future. Start by acknowledging the problem." "The legal community will crucify me," William said quietly. "Maybe," Robert agreed. "Or maybe they'll respect you for having the courage to face this head-on. Many judges probably have the same biases but aren't being forced to confront them." The two men talked for hours. By the time William left, he had a plan. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the right thing to do. Back home, William sat at his desk and began drafting a letter. It was addressed to the head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, requesting a formal review of his past rulings. His hands trembled slightly as he wrote. He also drafted a second letter, this one to Eleanor Bennett. He explained that he had reviewed her report carefully and had come to see the truth in her allegations. He proposed working together to create new guidelines for the court to prevent bias in sentencing. Just as he was sealing the envelopes, his phone rang. It was his daughter, Emily. "Dad, I saw the news. There's an article about a discrimination case being brought against you. Are you okay?" Her voice was worried. William hadn't realized the story had already reached the media. "I'm okay, Em. It's complicated, but I think this might actually be a good thing in the long run." "What do you mean?" she asked. William thought for a moment. "Sometimes we need someone to hold up a mirror so we can see ourselves clearly. I didn't like what I saw at first, but now I have a chance to be better." After hanging up, William looked at the two letters on his desk. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since Eleanor Bennett had stood in his courtroom, he felt a sense of hope. He picked up the letter addressed to her and added a handwritten note at the bottom. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's fix this together." The next morning, William walked into the courthouse with both letters in hand, ready to begin the hard work of making things right. The Eleanor Bennett was surprised when her assistant told her Judge Harrington was calling. She was even more surprised when he asked to meet with her privately, away from the courthouse. After some thought, she agreed and suggested a small coffee shop near her office. When Eleanor arrived, she spotted Judge Harrington immediately. Without his black robes in a simple blue sweater and khaki trousers. He looked smaller somehow, more human. He stood when he saw her, looking nervous. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice quieter than it had been in court. "Please call me Eleanor," she replied, taking a seat across from him. The waitress came and took their orders. Black coffee for him, tea with milk for her. When she left, an awkward silence fell between them. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," William finally said, "about your case, about the report you presented, about my entire career." Eleanor remained quiet, allowing him to continue. "I've written to the Judicial Conduct Committee," he said, surprising her. "I've requested a formal review of my past rulings." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. This was not what she had expected. Most judges would fight tooth and nail against such accusations. "That's a brave step," she said carefully. William shook his head. "It's not brave, it's necessary. I've been reviewing my own cases. The bias is real and it's not small. I've been unfair to many people, including you." The waitress returned with their drinks. Eleanor took a sip of her tea, studying the man across from her. She had expected anger or denial, not this humble acceptance. "I had a proposal," William continued, pulling a folder from his bag. "I'd like to work with your firm to create a community review board for the court, and I'd like to start with dismissing your fine and apologizing." Eleanor took the folder and opened it. Inside was a detailed plan for a review board made up of legal professionals and community members who would monitor sentencing patterns and suggest improvements. "Judge Harrington—" "William, please," he interrupted. "William," she corrected herself. "I don't want special treatment, I want systemic change." "So do I," he said seriously. "The fine was unjust. Dismissing it isn't special treatment, it's correcting an error, but that's just the start. This review board could help prevent these problems in the future." Eleanor looked down at the proposal again. It was well thought out and could make a real difference. She had expected to fight a long court battle, not to find an ally in the judge himself. "Why are you doing this?" she asked directly. Most judges would fight these allegations. William looked out the window for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "My father was a judge," he said finally. "He taught me to believe in the system, but he also taught me that the highest form of respect for the law is acknowledging when it fails and working to fix it." He paused. "I failed, not the system. Me, and I want to make it right." Eleanor found herself believing him. There was a sincerity in his eyes that couldn't be faked. "It won't be easy," she warned. "Some people will see this as an admission of guilt." "It is an admission of guilt," William replied simply. "I was wrong. I'm hoping that by acknowledging that, I can help others see their own blind spots too." Eleanor smiled for the first time since sitting down. "All right then. Let's work together." Over the next hour, they discussed the details of the review board. By the time they finished their drinks, they had a solid plan and a list of potential board members representing diverse backgrounds. As they were leaving, William held the door open for Eleanor. "There's something I've been wondering," he said. "Why didn't you tell me you were a lawyer when you were in my courtroom that day?" Eleanor looked at him thoughtfully. "Because I wanted to be treated the same way all my clients are treated. I wanted to experience the system from their perspective." William nodded slowly. "And that experience led to all this. Sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected places," Eleanor replied. As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, both felt a sense of hope that hadn't been there before. What had started as an adversarial situation had somehow transformed into a partnership focused on creating real change. "I'll have my team contact yours to set up our first working session," Eleanor called as she walked toward her car. "I look forward to it," William replied, genuinely meaning it. The end 6 months later, the sun shone brightly on the new Community Justice Center. A small crowd had gathered for the opening ceremony. Red and blue ribbons decorated the entrance of the converted building that had once been an old library. William Harrington stood at the podium, no longer wearing judge's robes, but a simple suit with a blue tie. Next to him stood Eleanor Bennett, elegant in a red dress, her smile genuine as she surveyed the crowd. "Today marks a new beginning for our justice system," William said into the microphone. "6 months ago, I was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth about myself and the way I had been dispensing justice. Thanks to Ms. Bennett's courage and persistence, we now have a new way forward." The crowd applauded politely. Among them were reporters, community members, and many of the defendants who had been part of Eleanor's original case against the court. William continued, "The Community Justice Center will serve as a place where citizens can learn about their rights, get legal help if they cannot afford it, and where our new review board will ensure that justice is truly equal for everyone." After the speeches, William and Eleanor stood together to cut the ribbon. Flashbulbs popped as photographers captured the moment. The judge and the lawyer who had once been opponents now working as partners. "I never thought I'd be standing here with you," William told her quietly as they posed for pictures. Eleanor smiled. Sometimes life gives us unexpected teachers. Inside, the center was buzzing with activity. Volunteers were setting up computers, arranging brochures, and preparing for the day's first visitors. The review board's office occupied one wing, with charts on the wall showing court statistics that would now be monitored monthly for signs of bias. William and Eleanor walked through the building, stopping to thank volunteers. Many of them were law students eager to help, but some were familiar faces, previous defendants from William's courtroom who had decided to be part of the solution. They paused in the main hall, where a young volunteer named Thomas was helping an elderly man fill out forms. "My father used to say that justice isn't just about following laws," Eleanor shared as they watched. "It's about seeing people, truly seeing them." William nodded thoughtfully. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was a judge for 30 years, Eleanor said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Maybe you've heard of Judge Thomas Bennett." William's jaw dropped in surprise. "Judge Thomas Bennett was your father? The same Judge Bennett who reformed the Northern District Courts back in the 90s? Eleanor nodded, enjoying his reaction. "The very same. He'd be proud of what we're doing here." William shook his head and laughed. "You might have mentioned that earlier." "Would it have made a difference?" she asked. William thought for a moment. "No," he said honestly. "I needed to learn my lesson the hard way." Later that afternoon, they sat in the center's small cafe, drinking tea and going over the day's events. The opening had been a success, with many community members stopping by to learn about the services offered. "The review board has already looked at over 200 cases," Eleanor noted, checking her tablet. "The new sentencing guidelines are making a real difference." William nodded. "And 5 other judges have volunteered to have their rulings reviewed. That's progress I didn't expect so quickly." "People can change when they're shown the truth in a way they can accept," Eleanor said. "You proved that." Outside the window, they could see people entering the center. A young mother with children, an elderly couple, a group of teenagers. Each one would find help here, a fair hearing, and respect regardless of their background. William thought about how much had changed in 6 months. He had stepped down from full-time judging to lead the Justice Center alongside Eleanor. Some of his colleagues had criticized him, but many more had supported the changes he was trying to make. "My daughter called this morning," William said. "She's thinking about going to law school now. Says she wants to be part of making the system better." Eleanor smiled. The ripples keep spreading. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the windows, William realized he felt happier than he had in years. What had begun as the most difficult moment of his career had transformed into something meaningful and right. "Ready for tomorrow?" Eleanor asked as they gathered their things to leave. "We have that meeting with the state committee about expanding the program." William smiled. "More than ready. This is just the beginning." They walked out together into the evening light, 2 people who had found common ground in the pursuit of true justice, proving that change was possible when hearts and minds were open to it. The end.